Okay, this is a game on Erlenberg Encounter Mode in the Type 62, the premium Chinese light tank. It's tier 7, which means that it does see 210s. And so one of the things I want to talk about on Erlenberg, particularly light tanks, is back to this idea of getting early intel. I think having early intel, especially on maps like Erlenberg, where teams tend to split to one half or the other, right? They either all go onto this 2 line or they all go onto this 9 line for the most part. That's where the main forces go. And so getting early intel gives your team a lot of information as far as what they could be up against and you know, what is and what is not there. You know, getting intel on this side actually still tells your guys on this other side what they're not going to see over on their side. And so basically it's intel by subtraction. And so one of the easiest ways to do it is there's a bush up here that works a lot better from going from the south than it is from the north. It is a little bit vulnerable in a light tank, but if you can get there, then you can spot their north side rather easily. And you'll notice I'm taking a path sort of about halfway up the hill, and the reason why I do that is because if they send a light tank down the middle over here or right here, I can potentially get lit moving into this position, and in that case all I have to do is just exit out over the hill to not get shot. But if they don't do that, then it's going to leave their slower tanks vulnerable to being spotted on this north side here. Right, and so we see a bunch of their tanks going up here. So at this point, when you do intel, there's two things that you need to do, right? You need to look at what your team is doing, right? So when we look at what our team is doing, we sent 4 tanks to the west, and we sent almost everybody else to the east, right? So we have a lot of firepower on this east, so we want to make this happen. And so one of the reasons why intel is nice is because when you have a lot of tanks here, and they know for a fact that they're not up against a lot of tanks, they are slightly more willing to press forward. Ideally you don't have another light tank shooting behind you, but then it's the brakes. This T-49 is moving up, and our bat chat has moved to this position here. I backed off because I don't want that T-49 to potentially just YOLO over, but since our bat chat is sitting out in the open, these guys are all just going to shoot him instead, which is not the best use of a bat chat. But I just want to see if that T-49 has come around on this side, and he has just a little bit. And I can't really front against that T-49 in my Type 62, so what I want to do is I want to see if there's anybody trailing those guys that were coming over here, some slower tanks that can potentially come through this side to support these guys on this side. We were able to get the patent now, which is you know, fantastic, but we don't really have much else in terms of intel. So we know that their T-95 just popped up in the middle. I think our 1390 just spotted that. And we see that their T-57 has made it into this back over here. And this is one of those situations where you have to just be a little bit patient as a light tank. You know, we do have a couple of big arty, and we just need to wait. The T-57 is not really moving, so there's no like big incentive for me to shoot at him or spook him in any way. If he's just gonna sit there, right? That's what Artie loves to see. If you're just sitting there for minutes on end and you're lit the entire time, you hope that your Artie can hit that. So they're sort of lined up here a little bit, and somebody does get a good shot on the T-57. And I think Artie will hit him eventually. And their T-95 is creeping up over here. We know the M103 is over there as well, but that's not that big of a deal as of this moment. We're still waiting for that T-57 to get picked off. If that T-57 gets picked off, then right, these guys can crush where this T-49 is. Somebody's shooting HE at him, which is not the best way to deal with the T-57, but them's the breaks. So he's almost down. And in the meantime, you always want to keep an eye on what's going on the other side. Our guys have pushed forward over here, which is not super recommended if you're a weak side like that, but that's what they've decided to do. We know that they have approximately the same number of tanks over there. We know that like the Waffle and the JPE are not accounted for right now.
It's a trap!
And so it's just the M103 over here now, right? Everybody else is slowly pushing around this side. It took us a little bit longer to clear this than, you know, ideally you would have hoped, but them's the breaks. And it'll be really easy for me to push past this M103. And all I'm looking to do is turret break here. I know I can get safely in these buildings over here. We do spot the GWE coming in, but he doesn't really have a shot on us. He's stuck over near their cap side. And so I just want to relight him. And it looks like he's running. And we know that they have another artillery as well, so we need to be a little bit thoughtful about how we deal with this. It looks like their GWA is going to suicide, so there's no point in chasing after him if we don't have to. And it looks like we've actually won on this other side as well, which is, you know, what you ideally want to see. And it's just really a matter of picking off the rest of these guys. You know, they had a couple of 10s and they had a couple of guys back here on that side, but they didn't really have enough and the right composition to win on that side per se.
It's a trap!
So we know where all the final tanks are, so it's going to be difficult to attack the Waffle or the JPE because the Waffle can cover the JPE, but the T-69 will be easy to attack into. And then there's a little ridge between me and the Waffle that you can potentially use if you're in a short tank like this. But the first thing you want to do is look and see where your backup is. So we got a 1390 coming in. And so we know the JPE is facing one way and the Waffle is facing the other. And so you just want to be you always want to be a threat to come over. You don't necessarily need to go over like our 1390 just did. You can do essentially what I'm doing right now, which is just drive past this little bit of the ridge and shoot over it and use that as cover. In the meantime, especially non-turreted tank destroyers end up being very vulnerable. And that's pretty much the ball game. So the reason why this round was easy, at least in part, was from the fact that we got early intel, right? We knew exactly what was coming over here ahead of time. We knew that they had a T-49, T-30, and a Patton. The Patton was killed before he was even able to get to the 9 line. So that's ideally what you want to see, especially since we only sent 4 tanks to the west and we had 11 tanks on the east, right? You want at least one of those guys to die early, which is sort of the danger of pushing across this B line, especially in somewhat slow tanks. If you have a light tank on the other team, you can get lit out here pretty easily, and if your opponent is on the ball, then you can get railed down fairly easily. It took us a little bit too long to kill the T-57, but them's the breaks. Eventually we were able to clear this side, which is what you want to see out of your strong side. When you have 11 people on one side, you want to be able to clear it out. And then the rest of this match was essentially just being patient with the Type 62. I don't need to push in, like I didn't need to push into that T-49 while the T-57 was still alive, while the M103, T-95 were still alive. They were in bad positions, right? That T-57 was not in a good position. He was never going to go any place where he could get good shots on our team without being extremely vulnerable. And that'll be reflected in his final score. And then the same can be said really for anybody who was left on this side. They all ended up over the barrel because of the positioning that they had, because of the positioning and the weight that our team had. And our team on the west pushed forward, but it wasn't enough to kill us. A lot of their big tank destroyers were pretty far in the back, so they dealt minimal damage, and that allowed us to have this time that it required to eventually clean off this east side and then push in behind them. And then again, it's just about being patient, using the terrain. Utilize your speed, right? I could be close to those 2 tank destroyers as long as I had certain terrain features in the way, to cover me, in a big hill, right? It's not like the Waffle could have just pushed up the hill very easily to chase after me. And so it's really one of those things where as long as you're close and you're lighting them, that's really what you're looking for. And so that worked out for us in this situation. And so if you look at the stats pretty much reflect what you just saw. We were able to get almost 5k spotting damage from that. Really dealing minimal damage, 1400 damage, and most of that was at the end. But the important thing, especially from the light tanks, and it doesn't really matter as much what you do in the mid game, but getting that early intel ends up being important if your team can or will use it. That's another question altogether, but having that knowledge is really important for the guys that are on your side in terms of making their decisions on what to do and what they're going to be up against. So anyhow, I hope that was helpful for playing light tanks on Erlenberg, and thanks for watching.